How? My name is Ophelia, and I just turned 25. That birthday always makes me think back to my 18th, the day everything changed. I was so excited to officially become an adult, but I never expected my own mother would use that milestone to completely blindside me. We were at my favorite restaurant when she told me I needed to put my future on hold to financially support my stepsister Bella. The look in her eyes still haunts me sometimes. Not love for me, but fear of disappointing her new husband. Where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button to hear how I finally stood up to my family's unfair expectations and found my own path forward. I grew up in a beautiful suburban neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. Our house wasn't huge, but it was filled with love and laughter. My parents, Sandra and Thomas, had me later in life, and I was their only child. Dad worked as an engineer, while Mom taught elementary school. They were devoted parents who encouraged my curiosity and independence. Dad would spend weekends helping me build science projects, while Mom taught me to bake and read me stories. Those early years felt perfect, like living inside a warm bubble of safety and belonging. Everything changed when I was 12. I remember the day vividly, coming home from school to find Mom sitting on the couch, her face blank with shock. Dad had collapsed at work from a massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. That single moment shattered our perfect world. Mom fell apart completely. I would hear her crying at night, and sometimes during the day, she would just stare at nothing holding Dad's sweater. I grew up quickly during those months, learning to cook simple meals, reminding Mom to eat, and trying to keep our home functioning while carrying my own grief. The next 2 years were just Mom and me rebuilding our lives together. We developed new routines and traditions like Sunday morning pancakes and Friday movie nights. It wasn't the same without Dad, but we were healing together. Mom eventually returned to teaching, and I focused on school. We had formed this tight unit supporting each other through the hardest time of our lives. I thought nothing could break that bond. When I was 14, Mom joined a grief support group at the community center. That's where she met Robert. He was a widower with a daughter my age named Bella. Mom started mentioning him more and more in conversation. At first, I was happy she seemed to be finding joy again. Her eyes had that spark that had been missing since Dad died. She deserved happiness, and I tried to be supportive. Our first meeting with Robert and Bella was at a local pizza place. Robert was tall, with a booming laugh, and seemed nice enough constantly touching Mom's hand or shoulder. Bella sat silently across from me, barely making eye contact. She had perfectly styled hair and designer clothes while I was in my regular jeans and t-shirt. When I tried starting conversation about school or music, she would respond with one-word answers and immediately look back at her phone. I remember going home and telling Mom that Bella seemed shy, but really, I felt this strange uneasiness. Something about her cold stare made me uncomfortable. Within 6 months, Mom announced they were getting married. Everything moved so quickly. Suddenly, Robert and Bella were moving into our house because it was bigger and in a better school district. I came home from school one day to find my childhood photos replaced with blended family portraits that had been professionally taken without me. When I asked Mom about it, she seemed flustered and said, "Robert thought it would make the place feel more like home for everyone." That was the first red flag I ignored out of love for my mother. Living with Bella was immediately tense. We were expected to share a bathroom, but she would lock the door and take hour-long showers, making me late for school. She refused to eat dinner with us some nights, and Robert would make separate meals for her. Mom started buying special snacks, just for Bella, that I wasn't allowed to touch, while the snacks I liked mysteriously stopped appearing in our pantry. The most revealing incident happened during sophomore year. I had spent weeks working on a science project about water purification inspired by research Dad and I had started together before he died. The night before it was due, I came home to find my carefully constructed filtration system dismantled, the poster board ruined with spilled nail polish. Bella claimed it was an accident when she was reaching for something in my room. I was devastated and stayed up all night trying to reconstruct everything. When I tried talking to Mom about establishing boundaries for my space, Robert interrupted saying, "Bella is still adjusting to sharing a home. You need to be more understanding." Mom nodded along with him. That was the moment I realized something fundamental had shifted. Mom was no longer my advocate. Our team of two had dissolved, and I was suddenly alone. High school became my escape from home. I joined every club I could: debate team, science, Olympiad, yearbook committee, anything to stay away from the house as long as possible. By sophomore year, I had also secured a part-time job at the local library shelving books and helping with children's reading hour. I loved being surrounded by books and the peaceful atmosphere. Plus, the library became my study haven since focusing at home was nearly impossible with Bella playing loud music or having friends over. The contrast between Bella and me became more pronounced with each passing month. While I maintained a 4.0 GPA and participated in extracurriculars, Bella barely passed her classes. She spent hours on social media obsessing over her appearance and followers. She had no hobbies or interests beyond shopping and parties. Yet despite our different approaches to school and life, there was a disturbing imbalance in how we were treated. The financial disparity became impossible to ignore. Bella received regular shopping sprees for designer clothes while I was told to make do with what I had. When my shoes wore out, Mom suggested I use my library money to buy new ones. Meanwhile, Robert took Bella to get the latest iPhone because all her friends had one. When the school dance approached, I was told to find something in my closet while Bella got a $300 dress she wore once. Whenever I questioned these differences, Mom had justifications ready. Bella had a harder childhood losing her mom so young. Or, Bella needs more support adjusting. Or, my personal favorite, you're just naturally more independent, Ophelia. As if my self-sufficiency should be punished rather than encouraged. I noticed Robert gradually taking control of all financial decisions in our household. Mom had always managed our money before, but now she deferred to him completely. When I asked about the college fund Dad had started for me, Mom became evasive, saying, "Robert is managing all our investments now." The subject was quickly changed whenever I brought it up. Junior year was when I really buckled down on college preparation. My guidance counselor, Ms. Winters, helped me identify scholarship opportunities and universities with strong English literature programs. I dreamed of becoming an editor at a publishing house someday, a dream Dad had always encouraged. I spent hours researching schools, writing practice essays, and studying for the SAT. Mom seemed supportive initially, hanging my practice test scores on the refrigerator and bragging to her friends about my academic achievements. Then came the academic trip that changed everything. My debate team qualified for nationals in Washington, D.C. The school covered most expenses, but we needed $300 for incidentals. When I asked Mom, she looked uncomfortable and said she needed to check with Robert. That night, I overheard their argument from my bedroom. "She earned this opportunity," Mom said. "We should support her." "We just spent $500 on Bella's new phone," Robert replied. "Besides, this debate stuff isn't going to get her anywhere in life." The next day, Mom told me they couldn't afford the trip. That same weekend, Bella came home with shopping bags from expensive stores. The injustice burned in my stomach, but I swallowed it down like I always did. I picked up extra shifts at the library and raised half the money myself, while my debate coach covered the rest after seeing my dedication. I never told Mom about this solution. Something had shifted in me. I realized I couldn't count on her support anymore. My friendship with Maya became my lifeline during this time. Her family often invited me for dinner, and her parents showed interest in my accomplishments and goals. Maya's mom, Dr. Davis, was a literature professor who brought me books from her university library and discussed them with me. In their home, I remembered what it felt like to be valued and seen. By senior year, I was accepted to State University with a partial scholarship that covered about half my tuition. It wasn't my dream school, but it had a good English program and was close enough to continue working at the library. When the acceptance letter arrived, I was ecstatic. Mom hugged me and seemed genuinely proud, which gave me hope that maybe things were changing. I envisioned a fresh start in college away from the daily inequities of our household. Little did I know what was coming on my 18th birthday. May 15th, my 18th birthday. I woke up feeling excited and oddly peaceful. There's something meaningful about that transition to legal adulthood, even if it's just a number. I had simple expectations for the day. Maybe a special breakfast, a few small gifts, and dinner with Mom. Despite everything, birthdays had always been sacred in our family, even after Dad died. Mom surprised me with blueberry pancakes that morning, just like Dad used to make. For a moment, it felt like old times. She gave me a simple silver bracelet that had belonged to my grandmother. "You're a woman now," she said, fastening it around my wrist. "Your father would be so proud of who you've become." I fought back tears, wishing more than anything that he could be there. The day passed normally. School, then a shift at the library. When I got home, Mom announced we were going to Pastore's, my favorite Italian restaurant, for dinner. I was touched that she remembered. What she didn't mention was that Robert and Bella would be joining us. The restaurant was warm and smelled of garlic and fresh bread. We were seated at a corner table, and I noticed Robert seemed unusually attentive, pulling out chairs and ordering an expensive bottle of wine. Bella sat across from me, scrolling through her phone and sighing dramatically every few minutes. Mom seemed tense, smiling too brightly and talking too quickly about nothing important. After our entrees, the waiter brought out tiramisu with a candle. They sang "Happy Birthday," and for a moment, I felt special. Then Robert cleared his throat and said, "Now that dessert is done, we need to have a family discussion." Mom reached over and took my hand. "Ophelia, honey, now that you're 18, we need to talk about your contribution to the household." I stared at her confused. "My contribution?" Robert took over, his voice all business. "We've done the calculations. With your library job, if you went full-time after graduation, you could contribute about 70% of your income to household expenses." The words hit me like ice water. "But I'm starting college in the fall." Mom squeezed my hand, not meeting my eyes. "We think it might be best to defer for a year or two, just until things stabilize financially." "Stabilize? What are you talking about?" I pulled my hand away, suddenly very aware of the other diners around us. Robert slid a paper across the table, a detailed budget showing my potential earnings and how much would go to family expenses. I stared at it in disbelief. "This is for Bella's tuition at Westlake Academy," I said, finally understanding as I pointed to the largest expense line. Westlake was an expensive private school known more for its social connections than academics. Mom nodded. "Bella needs specialized attention that public school can't provide." I looked at Bella, who was suddenly very interested in our conversation, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. She had spent the last 3 years doing the bare minimum at our public school, and now I was expected to fund her private education. "But what about my college, my scholarship, the plans we've been making for years?" My voice cracked with emotion. Robert's expression hardened. "You're an adult now, Ophelia. Time to help the family instead of just thinking about yourself." Mom jumped in. "It's not forever, sweetheart. Just until Robert's business picks up. Bella needs this opportunity and you're so capable. You can start college a little later." The unfairness of it all hit me like a physical blow. I had worked so hard, done everything right, and now, on what should have been a day of celebration, they were telling me to sacrifice my future for a stepsister who had never shown me an ounce of kindness. "I can't believe you're doing this," I whispered to Mom, tears welling in my eyes. "Dad would never have asked this of me." Her face paled at the mention of Dad. Robert put his arm around her protectively. "Your mother and I have decided what's best for this family. You're either part of this family or you're not." I stood up so quickly, my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I guess I'm not then." I grabbed my purse and walked out, ignoring Mom calling my name. I walked for miles that night, sobbing under the spring stars, feeling utterly betrayed. Eventually, I found myself outside Maya's house. Her parents welcomed me without questions, setting up their guest room and making tea. When I finally explained what happened, Dr. Davis shook her head in disbelief. "That's not what family does to each other, Ophelia," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "What they're asking isn't fair or reasonable." I fell asleep in their guest room, surrounded by borrowed pajamas and kindness, with one clear thought: I needed to find another way forward. I returned home the next morning to find Mom waiting anxiously in the kitchen. Robert had already left for work, and Bella was still asleep, typical for her on a weekend. Mom rushed to hug me, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. "I was so worried when you didn't come home," she said, pouring coffee for both of us. "I called, but you didn't answer." "I stayed at Maya's," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I needed space to think. Mom sat across from me, attempting a normal conversation about graduation preparations and summer plans, as if she hadn't just asked me to sacrifice my entire future the night before. I let her talk, observing this stranger who looked like my mother, but no longer acted like her. "About college," she eventually said, her voice carefully casual. "Robert has already called State University to defer your enrollment." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "He did what he has no right to do that. He's just trying to help organize things," Mom said, defensive immediately. "We're family now, Ophelia. Sometimes family members need to make sacrifices for each other." "Interesting how I'm the only one sacrificing," I replied. "What's Bella giving up?" Mom's expression hardened slightly. "Bella has already lost so much in her life." That afternoon, while everyone was out, I went into Mom's home office to look for my college fund statements. Dad had started the account when I was born, adding to it monthly. It had been a significant amount the last time I'd seen a statement 2 years ago. After searching through files, I finally found the folder labeled Ophelia's Education. Inside was an account statement showing a zero balance with withdrawals dating back 6 months. All the money was gone. I sat on the floor, papers scattered around me, feeling physically ill. They had been planning this for months. My college fund, my father's legacy to me, had been emptied without my knowledge or consent, for what Bella's private school tuition and who knew what else. When Mom returned, I confronted her in the kitchen, statement in hand. "You stole my college fund," I said, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm inside me. Mom's face flushed. "It wasn't stealing, Ophelia. We're family. Robert needed to consolidate our finances for tax purposes." "Dad set that money aside for my education," I said, "not for Bella's private school." She glanced nervously toward the stairs, lowering her voice. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Robert has made it clear that Bella's needs come first. He's threatened to leave if I don't support his decisions about Bella." "So you're sacrificing my future because you're afraid of being alone?" The realization felt like a slap. Tears filled her eyes. "You don't know what it's like, Ophelia. After your father died, I was so lost. I can't go through that again." In that moment, seeing her weakness, I made a decision. Fighting openly wouldn't work. I needed a strategic approach. "I understand, Mom," I said, softening my tone. "I'll figure something out." The next day, I met with Ms. Winters, my high school counselor, sharing the full situation. Her expression grew increasingly concerned as I explained. "What they're asking isn't just unfair, it could impact your entire future," she said. "Let's look at your options." She helped me research financial aid that wouldn't require parental information. It was possible to declare financial independence for federal aid purposes, but it wasn't simple. I would need documentation and possibly legal help. We created a plan with multiple steps, including potential emergency housing options through the university if necessary. I began carefully documenting everything, taking photos of the empty college fund statements, recording conversations about financial expectations on my phone, gathering mail about Bella's private school costs. Each piece was evidence of what was happening. I also reached out to my father's sister, Aunt Jennifer, who lived about an hour away. Mom had gradually disconnected from Dad's family after remarrying, claiming they reminded her too much of her loss. Aunt Jennifer was shocked to hear about my situation and immediately offered support. "Your father would be furious," she said during our coffee meeting. "This is not what he wanted for you." Meanwhile, I worked extra shifts at the library pretending to accept my parents' plan. I handed over most of my paycheck as expected, but secretly kept all my tips in a new bank account Aunt Jennifer helped me open. I lived in a constant state of anxiety, fearing they would discover my plans before I could execute them. Each night, I would lie awake, planning my escape while listening to Bella watching TV in the next room, her life continuing unaffected while mine had been derailed. Summer after graduation was brutal. I worked full-time at the library plus weekend shifts at a local coffee shop. Between both jobs, I was working nearly 60 hours weekly while trying to finalize my escape plan. The physical exhaustion was nothing compared to the emotional toll of living a double life, pretending compliance while secretly preparing to leave. Every 2 weeks, I would hand over my paychecks to Robert, who would inspect the amounts with a satisfied nod before adding them to the household account. I would watch silently as that money I had earned shelving books in the summer heat and making lattes at dawn, disappeared into Bella's expensive lifestyle. One particularly painful memory stands out. After receiving my paycheck, Mom and Robert immediately took Bella shopping for dance competition costumes. They returned with bags from expensive boutiques, and Bella twirled around the living room, showing off a sequined outfit that cost more than I made in a week. "Thanks for working so hard, stepsister," she said with a smirk when her parents weren't listening. "It must be exhausting being the responsible one while I get to have all the fun." Her taunting grew bolder as the summer progressed. She would leave her dirty dishes for me to clean, knowing I couldn't complain without seeming petty. She invited friends over for pool parties while I was trying to sleep between shifts. When I asked for quiet, she would say, "Maybe if you weren't so boring and actually had friends, you wouldn't care about a little noise." The true nature of the situation became even clearer when I overheard Robert and Mom discussing Bella's private school performance. Despite the expensive tuition, my tuition, Bella was failing multiple classes and had been caught skipping school repeatedly. "Maybe she needs a tutor," Mom suggested timidly. "What she needs is more time," Robert replied firmly. "Not everyone develops academically at the same pace. Ophelia can keep working to support her education. She's good at working. It's what she's suited for." Later that night, I overheard them discussing their long-term plans. "Ophelia can work for at least a couple of years," Robert was saying. "By then, Bella will be through high school and we can reassess." The realization hit me hard. There was never going to be a time when I would be allowed to pursue my own education. They would always find reasons why Bella's needs should come first. I was seen as nothing more than a source of income to fund their preferred child's opportunities. The final breaking point came in late August. I returned from work to find my mail had been opened, specifically a letter from State University about maintaining my deferred enrollment status. The letter had been hidden beneath a stack of magazines, but I found it while cleaning. Someone had read it and deliberately concealed it from me. I confronted Mom that evening while Robert was at a business dinner. "You opened my mail and hid it from me," I said, holding up the crumpled letter. She couldn't meet my eyes. "I was going to tell you about it. When after the deferment period expired and I lost my spot completely, the anger I'd been suppressing for months bubbled to the surface." "You never intended for me to go to college, did you?" Her silence was answer enough. "Mom, this isn't fair. I've worked so hard. I earned that scholarship. Why is Bella's future more important than mine?" My voice cracked with emotion. She finally looked at me, her expression a mixture of guilt and resignation. "Bella needs more support than you do. You're stronger, more capable. You've always been able to figure things out on your own. So I'm being punished for being responsible for not causing problems." It's not punishment, Ophelia. Sometimes we have to sacrifice for family. The word family ignited something in me. Family doesn't exploit each other. Dad would never have asked this of me, and you know it. When Robert returned home, Mom told him about our argument. He stormed into my room without knocking. Your mother and I have made our decision. While you live in this house, you'll contribute as we decided. If you don't like it, there's the door. He probably didn't expect me to take him up on his offer, but in that moment, something snapped inside me. Fine, I said calmly. I'll be gone by morning. I started packing immediately, taking only what was absolutely necessary: clothes, personal documents, and the few keepsakes from Dad I couldn't bear to leave behind. Mom hovered in the doorway, alternating between pleading and threatening. You're being ridiculous, she said. Where will you even go? Anywhere is better than staying where I'm not valued, I replied, continuing to pack methodically. Bella appeared, drawn by the commotion. She's bluffing, she told her father confidently. She has nowhere to go. I ignored them all, focusing on the task at hand. I had called Aunt Jennifer, who was already on her way. The 3 hours I waited for her were the longest of my life, enduring Robert's threats and Mom's tearful manipulation. When Aunt Jennifer's car finally pulled into the driveway, I felt a wave of relief so powerful my knees nearly buckled. As I carried my bags to the car, Mom made one last attempt. If you leave now, don't expect to come back, she said, Robert standing solidly behind her. I paused at the front door, looking back at the home that had once been filled with love, but now felt like a prison. I never planned to, I replied, walking away from the only home I'd known and into an uncertain future. Moving into Aunt Jennifer's one-bedroom apartment near State University was a physical and emotional adjustment. She gave me her bedroom while she took the pull-out couch, despite my protests. Those first few weeks were a blur of conflicting emotions. Grief for the mother I had effectively lost, guilt that somehow I had failed our family, anger at the unfairness of it all, and surprisingly relief. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of constant disapproval and exploitation. Your father would be proud of you for standing up for yourself, Aunt Jennifer told me one evening as we shared dinner at her small kitchen table. Thomas always said you had his backbone. With Aunt Jennifer's help, I contacted State University's financial aid office to explain my situation. The administrators were surprisingly understanding. A compassionate financial aid officer named Mrs. Lopez worked with me to restore my enrollment and create a new financial aid package based on my independent status. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but combined with my scholarship and savings, it made college possible again. Then came an unexpected revelation. During a conversation about Dad, Aunt Jennifer mentioned his life insurance policy. What policy? I asked, confused. She looked equally confused. The policy Thomas took out when you were born. It was substantial, at least $100,000. Half was meant for Sandra's security, and half was explicitly designated for your education. Didn't Sandra use that for your college fund? The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Not only had Mom and Robert emptied my college fund, but they had apparently diverted Dad's insurance money as well. Money that had been specifically intended for me. With Aunt Jennifer's help, I contacted the insurance company and discovered the truth. The educational portion of the policy had been placed in a trust that I could legally claim now that I was 18. The paperwork took weeks to process, but eventually I recovered nearly $60,000 that rightfully belonged to me. During this time, Mom made multiple attempts to regain control. She showed up at the library during my shifts, crying about financial hardships and begging me to come home. Robert is so angry, she would say. We're struggling without your contribution. She enlisted family friends to call me, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter. Some believed her version of events, sending me disappointed messages about family loyalty. Others, who had witnessed the changes in our home after Robert arrived, offered support instead. The most devastating tactic was when she threatened to completely disown me. "If you don't come home and apologize to Robert, you'll no longer be my daughter," she said during one particularly heated phone call. "Mom," I replied, my heart breaking even as I stood firm. "I stopped being your daughter the moment you decided Bella's future was worth more than mine." As I settled into college life working part-time at the university bookstore while maintaining a full course load, I began building a new support system. My roommate Zoe became a close friend along with several students from my English literature cohort. These relationships were refreshingly equal. No one was using me or expecting me to sacrifice my needs for theirs. In October, I received an unexpected email from Bella. The subject line read simply, "Things are bad here." Against my better judgment, I opened it. The message was surprisingly vulnerable. Robert had lost his job. They couldn't afford Westlake anymore. Mom was depressed. The carefully constructed life they had built at my expense was crumbling. I showed the email to Aunt Jennifer, who had become my most trusted advisor. "Do you think it's manipulation?" I asked. She considered the question carefully. "Maybe, but it might also be true. Your instincts about Robert were right from the beginning. There was always something off about how quickly he took financial control." With Aunt Jennifer's support, I did some investigation. Robert's successful business had apparently been struggling for years. There were rumors of gambling debts and mismanaged client funds. The perfect life he had portrayed, and that my mother had sacrificed me to maintain, had been built on lies. Then came the call I had been dreading. Mom sobbing, claiming she was ill and needed me to come home. "I made mistakes, Ophelia. I see that now. But I need my daughter." The old Ophelia would have rushed home immediately, putting everyone else's needs before her own. The new Ophelia consulted her support system, arranged for a friend to drive her, and set clear boundaries about the visit being temporary. The house looked the same, but felt different when I arrived. Mom did look unwell, thinner with dark circles under her eyes. But after spending an hour with her, I realized there was no serious illness. This was another manipulation tactic, albeit one born of genuine emotional distress. That evening, with Bella out with friends and Robert working late, Mom and I had our first honest conversation in years. "Why wasn't I enough?" I asked her the question that had haunted me since she remarried. "Why was it so easy to sacrifice my future?" She broke down completely. "I was terrified of being alone again," she admitted between sobs. "After your father died, I couldn't bear the thought of losing another partner. When Robert made it clear that Bella's happiness was his priority, I convinced myself that you would be fine no matter what. You were always so strong, so independent. I told myself you could handle it." "Being capable doesn't mean I deserve to be exploited," I said quietly. She nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Later, surprisingly, Bella sought me out. We sat on the back porch, the same place where we had first awkwardly met years ago. "I was jealous of you," she admitted, looking at the ground. "You were so smart and confident. Everyone at school respected you. Teachers loved you. I knew I could never compete with that, so I didn't even try." "It wasn't a competition, Bella." "In my dad's world, everything is a competition," she replied. "And when you're not winning, you find ways to change the rules." I left the next day after setting clear boundaries with Mom. I would maintain contact, but on my terms. No more manipulation, no more sacrificing my needs, no more Robert making decisions about my life. "I love you, Mom," I said as I left. "But I love myself too, and that's something Dad would want for me." 3 years later, I stood on the university quad in my cap and gown diploma in hand. The journey from that devastating 18th birthday to graduation had been challenging, but transformative. I had maintained a 3.8 GPA while working part-time, secured an editorial internship that led to a job offer at Hammond Publishing, and built a life filled with authentic relationships. Looking out at the crowd, I saw Aunt Jennifer cheering wildly. Beside her stood David, my boyfriend of 2 years, who I had met in a Victorian literature seminar. His steadfast support and genuine respect had helped heal my wariness of relationships. My friends Zoe and Marcus waved enthusiastically the chosen family who had seen me through late-night study sessions and celebration dinners alike. And in the back row, looking both proud and uncertain, stood my mother, alone. The past 3 years had brought many changes. 6 months after I left home, the truth about Robert's financial deception came to light. He had been gambling away their savings and had accumulated massive debt. When Mom discovered he had taken out loans in her name without her knowledge, she finally found the courage to leave him. The divorce was messy, but necessary. My relationship with Mom was slowly rebuilding on new, healthier terms. We had regular but limited contact, monthly dinners, and occasional phone calls. There were still moments of tension when old patterns emerged, but therapy had helped us both recognize and address them. Her genuine apology had come after nearly a year of counseling when she finally understood the full impact of her choices. "I failed you as a mother," she had said during a particularly emotional dinner. "I put my fears above your well-being. I can never undo that damage, but I want you to know I see it now. I see you now." Surprisingly, Bella and I had also developed a cautious relationship. After Robert's financial house of cards collapsed, she had been forced to confront some hard truths about her father and her own entitled behavior. She got her GED and enrolled in community college, working part-time at a local cafe to support herself. Our conversations were still sometimes awkward, but there was a growing mutual respect. "You showed me there's another way to live," she told me once. "I always thought happiness came from getting what you want. You taught me it actually comes from earning what you need." My relationship with David had brought unexpected healing as well. His family valued education and independence, treating me with a respect that still sometimes felt foreign. His mother, a family court judge, often told me how impressed she was with my resilience. "Not everyone could turn such adversity into strength," she would say. The engagement ring on my finger was new. David had proposed just a week before graduation. Our wedding planning involved clear boundaries from the start. Mom would be invited as a guest, not as a wedding planner. Her attempts to take over were gently but firmly redirected. "This is your day," she finally acknowledged after one such correction. "I'm just grateful to be included." Perhaps the achievement that brought me the most satisfaction was the scholarship fund I established with part of my father's insurance money. The Thomas James Memorial Scholarship provided financial support to students from difficult family situations. The first recipient was a young woman whose parents had died, leaving her to care for younger siblings while pursuing her education. Helping her felt like honoring Dad's memory in the most appropriate way. As I moved into my first apartment with David and started my editorial assistant position at Hammond Publishing, I often reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The painful lessons about setting boundaries, recognizing manipulation, and valuing my own worth had shaped me into someone stronger than I ever imagined I could be. I maintained contact with Mom on my terms, celebrating her genuine efforts to change while remaining vigilant about old patterns. Bella has shown surprising growth, working steadily toward her associate's degree and developing independence from her father's influence. We'll never be the sisters our parents tried to force us to be, but we've found our own version of family connection. The most powerful lesson I've learned is the difference between sacrifice and exploitation. Healthy families support each other's growth, not demand the suffocation of potential. True love lifts everyone up rather than elevating one person at another's expense. If you're watching this and struggling with family expectations that feel more like demands, remember that you deserve to pursue your own path. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stand firm in your own worth, even when those who should support you try to diminish it. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit that like button. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult truths. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your future belongs to you, not to those who would sacrifice it for their own comfort.